And we are live. All right. Fact checking Dune with Mark Metz. We are going to take a look at the new Dune movie and review that a little bit and talk about what we thought about it. We both read the book, and I was actually brushing up on some stuff before we got started, and we were talking about some other stuff. And I got into some conversations over the last week or so about different aspects of Dune on Twitter and stuff. I do really appreciate the fact that there are a lot of people who I don't think knew that this was a book who have started to look at that since this movie came out. Like it's generated it's at least generated some buzz around that, which is really cool in my opinion. So that is an interesting thing and a good thing that's come out of it. So I guess let's take it from what did you think about the movie overall?
Overall, I think, which is funny, I'm about to say that I was entertained. Seems like there are a lot of people on Twitter who had that complete opposite effect, where they're like, this was boring, nothing happens. But I thought it was entertaining. Obviously, we can get into the parts where it didn't necessarily follow along with the book, or the movie took some liberties, I guess. But I was entertained enough to watch it at home, and then I went to the theaters to watch it to get the whole full effect. I do like Hans Zimmer's soundtrack. Like the soundtrack of the movie was really, really good. I don't know what you thought of that.
That was something that I did want to touch on, because I really liked the soundtrack. Like it really made the show come to life, especially because you've got the different worlds. When they start out on their home world, and like the way that he builds the music and the thematic elements there, and then moving to Arrakis and with the Fremen and everything else, and kind of the way the music and the tone really fit that like desert planet setting. Like I was really impressed with. I was really impressed with the score. Like the whole time I thought like this music is like spot on at every time.
And this is the guy that does is not Lord of the Rings. He does the Star Wars soundtracks, right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought the cinematography was good too. There was I don't know if you're a fan of the Lord of the Rings movies. No, yes. You like the books better.
You already know that. I just talked before we got started. I just talked about owning all of J.R.R. Tolkien's written works. But
it's weird because when the first trilogy of the Lord of the Rings movies, like I thought the camera work and the cinematography of that was good, and then when The Hobbit comes out, I absolutely hated it. I hated all the Hobbit movies. And I think this cinematography actually is more in line with The Hobbit, but it works better for science fiction than for fantasy, I thought.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was the way they lay it out and show you the world and show you the different elements of it, and like the desert and the worms and like the city, because they capture all of I thought they did a really good job of capturing all of the like big parts of this that like you didn't in the first Dune. I guess I say the first Dune movie, the early '80s Dune movie.
Mm-hmm.
It like they never really had the big wide shots. They never had the really big like show you this world in all of its grandeur, because it is a very well built universe that Frank Herbert created, and so you get to see it like on display and really come to life. And I thought it was in a really, really cool and a very apt way. Like I really liked the way that they did all of the like the ships, the spaceships, and the transports that they use, and the shields and the weapons. Like it was, I thought it was well put together.
Yeah. You brought up the worm, so it just sparked a question. I heard your episode before this one, your solo episode that came out recently, and you were talking about how you've been watching Foundation and how you feel like some of the artifacts or whatever don't fit the description in the book. Is that how you pictured the worm?
No, not particularly.
Yeah.
I didn't dislike it, but yeah, it wasn't that. I mean, you've always seen the worm as like the 3-piece mouth that open.
Yeah.
And I guess
this mouth looked, to be honest, like a butthole, but that's what I thought.
Yeah. Thanks. Now I can never unsee that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily dislike it, but yeah, it wasn't exactly what I was imagined. But on that topic and kind of thinking of it, so as you go through the Dune books, and maybe this is a spoiler, I don't know how far you've read in the book. What you find out is that Arrakis and the spice are a product of the worms. Like, they are basically eternally burrowing through the planet, and the spice is like a byproduct of what they're burrowing. So to have it be a always open hole, like a mouth like that, the way that they portrayed it might actually be more physiologically accurate to what the worms do in terms of the book. But yeah, I mean, that's never the way I pictured them. But when you think about it in the large scope of what the worms, their purpose on the planet of Arrakis, it might be more accurate to have them depicted that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't know how far you've read into the book series.
Not as far as you, that is for sure.
So yeah, it's the worms have the worms and Paul have a very unique relationship as you go into the second and third books, and you get to see some of their importance to the planet, like what the worms' real contribution is beyond just being these giant things that destroy stuff and
I think if someone's going into this movie having not read the book or the books, they're probably like, what's the point of the worm? So
yeah,
kind of dig deeper. Yeah.
That was something that I really wanted to, because I think you and I both had kind of the same reaction right off the bat. When right after I watched it, and I sent you a message when you were watching it the first time, I was like my initial reaction to the movie was, I really, really like this, but if somebody's coming in who has never read the books, they're going to be completely lost. Like I'm sure you can get like a high level of entertainment value out of it, and because it is an entertaining movie, like just surface level, if you don't know what's going on and you're just watching like for a beautiful picture and a good score and plenty of action and fighting and stuff like that, like it is a very good movie in that terms. But if you're like trying to understand what's going on, you're probably completely lost, because like they just kind of throw you right into this world that like with no context really.
Yeah. But I mean, to be honest, you have to do digging even when you read the book for the first time too. Like you kind of like jump right into the story and you're trying to figure things out as you're reading along in the book as well. But Herbert kind of gives you hints throughout, and you can follow the story pretty well. I think if someone really did enjoy the movie or was entertained by it, I think it did a good job of maybe getting them to want to read it, motivating them to want to read it. I mean, if I went in and watched this movie without having read the book, I would want to read it. It's the same as The Lord of the Rings. It's like, all right, I love those movies, but I hear that the books are infinitely better. So if they're infinitely better, then I got to dig into these. So right. I think that the movie did a good job of that. I think you understand more of the, I don't know, like the themes or the dialogue that's going on in the movie, obviously. If you read the book going in before, which is the case with all like movies or books in the movies. But I don't know if you want to talk about, you understand the universe and the background better, if you want to give a brief background of it.
Yeah.
You explained it a little bit on our show a couple months ago.
Yeah, we can do a little bit of the the nuance of it. So, it's and see, I actually had this conversation on Twitter with Adam Nutter and some others yesterday. The people who were talking about the sword fighting, like why they use swords, and that was it. When you join the stream, actually, the part that I was reading was the part where they talk about the shields and their swords, and because I've seen, I'm kind of scattered right now. So I've seen it mentioned more than once that why don't they have guns, or why are they all sword fighting? And it's because of the body shields that they all use. The bullet, or a bullet, laser, like that high speed projectile would not pierce the shielding. So the swords and stuff, that's their way of getting through these shields. That the shields require a low impact to pierce them. It's not something that's considered deadly, so the shield lets it through. So that's why it's swords, knives, like close combat type fighting. And then somebody else had mentioned the blow dart. They got through Leto's shield, and that is actually explained in the book. It's a slow dart or something of that nature. Like it's a projectile specifically designed to penetrate a shield. Once it makes contact with the shield, it slows itself down so that it passes through the shield, like the slow blade that Gurney talks about when he and Paul have their sparring match. So that's kind of the fighting and the weapons and stuff like that in a nutshell. And then something that doesn't get explained like at all in the movie is the Mentats. You see, shoot, and now I'm drawing a blank on his name. Anyway, the guy who does the calculations for
starts with an H, right?
I know. Why am I suddenly
That's
going
Howard.
Yeah. And so when Duke Leto says, how much did it cost for them to send this entourage here? And he sits there and
go behind,
yeah, and he like tells him instantly. Like, so in the Dune universe, all computers have been basically banned and destroyed because, and Frank Herbert may have been a little bit ahead of his time on seeing this.
Yeah.
But the reason that they were banned and destroyed is because they basically enslaved humanity. And whether it meant like actual physical enslavement, like, Terminator Judgment Day type of enslavement of humanity, or just the way that we are effectively slaves to our technology right now. I mean, it's pretty prescient for him to acknowledge that the computers and the technology had enslaved humanity, and so they did away with it. So instead of having computers, you have the Mentats, who are basically like very fine-tuned, highly trained human computers. And then that brought up, how can they not have computers if they're doing all of this space travel? Well, then that gets into the spice and the navigators of the Spacing Guild and all of that. And they don't actually travel through space. The guild navigators basically live their life in a super focused spice-induced trance. Like they are completely engulfed in the spice, and it has, which the books and stuff get into as you go on, which you don't really get to see a lot of the you don't really get to see the spice come into play a whole lot or be really given any explanation in this movie, like whatsoever. The spice is just kind of a thing that they do, but it doesn't have a whole lot of, at least for this movie, it doesn't have a whole lot of meaning or given any legitimate purpose. But in the books, it's extremely important because the spice is how the guild navigators, basically it's like a, I don't know, what would you call it? It's like magic mushrooms, only it doesn't just make you think you're going to another universe. Like it actually puts you there. Like
you are actually going, yeah.
It's
some crazy drug.
It's a crazy hallucinogen that can actually bend space and time. And so that's what the guild navigators use the spice to not travel from place to place, but to fold space over on itself, where that you were here and now you're here. Like you don't travel through space. You arrive at your destination in space because they alter. I mean, basically they move reality to where you were is now somewhere else. Right? So that's kind of the 1,000-foot view, nuts and bolts of the Dune universe, because none of that stuff gets explained in any way really.
And as far as the Dune universe for this movie goes, we've got Caladan, where House Atreides begins in the movie, and Harkonnen is in charge of Arrakis, right? And then there's this switch that you find out later is kind of maneuvered with the Baron, the head of the Harkonnens, and the Emperor to kind of bring down House Atreides. Is that correct?
Yeah. And so there's a whole lot of nuance that gets left out in that side of it too. Like they don't in this movie, you don't get an introduction to the Emperor whatsoever. Which I thought was interesting. I mean, not that he necessarily plays like a really huge role in the events that this part of the movie is, describing from the book, but still, like maybe to just to introduce him so kind of who's there. But that's semantics. Like that doesn't take away from the quality of it for me. But so the Emperor, we can really dig into this, and we may as well. So House Atreides is actually developing a weapon, which you don't see at any point in this movie. And this is going to be where the test comes for me, is how do they build it out in 2 and 3? Because I felt like this really set a good stage, but there's a whole lot of depth and nuance that if they don't really start fleshing that out and filling it in the next movies, then I will be disappointed. But at least for what this was as an introductory movie, I really liked it. But so House Atreides is developing this weapon, and plus they are charismatic, they are well loved, they have a massive army that is extremely strong. They have the best trainers with Gurney Halleck and Duncan Idaho. They have the best Mentat. They are the house.
They're threatening the Emperor as well by becoming so strong.
Right, and the really funny thing about that is, Duke Leto does not have interest in being Emperor. He is not actually threatening the Emperor in any way, but because of who they are and what their house represents, the Emperor feels threatened. And so plus Arrakis is, at this point in the story, effectively at unending war. It is a House Harkonnen occupied Arrakis is like the U.S. occupying the Middle East. It's nonstop war, and maybe we get oil out of it, but what's the toll that's being taken with constantly fighting unendingly, you know?
Yeah.
So that,
and their Baron is literally getting fat off of the riches. It's
like literally, and his character, I like the gosh, I can't remember the actor's name. Anyway, when I saw that he was going to be playing it, I was like, oh, I know, like this guy will do good. Like he will be fucking terrifying, and that's what like that's what you want from that character is like he needs to not terrifying in like a physically intimidating way, but in just like this is the worst human being in the universe,
just
kind of
completely repulsive. Like he's just
right.
And I liked it better in this one than in the movie made in the 80s because the Harkonnens were all redheads in the 80s. And I'm like, wait a second. Like, hold up.
I didn't think about that. How that might be personally offensive for you.
It's all right, I got over
it. But yeah, I mean, you're right on that. And also the way they were portrayed in the 80s was a little more cartoonish. Like they were way over the top, less creepy and more just disgusting. Whereas this really kind of sold the just evil.
Yeah, just they're cold and just completely black. Yeah, there's like nothing, no sort of feeling there. Yeah.
But so with the Harkonnen rule of Arrakis, there is an opportunity to take the Harkonnens out, and it can at least on the surface look like there's a good reason for it. So it doesn't look like the Emperor is doing anything malevolent or malicious. That he is taking what have been bad rulers of a very important planet.
Yeah, it does seem in the book they're a little bit more privy to like this is a trap, like even the Duke is. Whereas in the movie, maybe you get the sense that the Duke thinks it's a trap, but he's always like even in the book he thinks that he can maneuver his way out of the trap that the Emperor and the Harkonnens are setting. But there's a little bit more element of surprise in the movie than what there is in the book. Yeah,
they definitely played Leto off as a little bit more naive and
aloof.
What's the? I don't want to say principled, but like ideological. He believes in what they're doing as a family, and like he sees this as an opportunity in the movie. The way they portrayed him, like he sees this as an opportunity to change the planet and to like make peace and all of that. And not that wasn't a part of the book, but he also very clearly understood in the book, like they're sending us here to fuck us over one way or the other. Like we are, and maybe there was a little more arrogance in the book version that, like you said, he believed that he could maneuver his way around it, that they had the best military, they had the best minds, that they could withstand it and come out on top. But he also, I guess, didn't know the full scope of how badly they were getting ready to fuck him.
Right.
Which they did. They really played that part.
They didn't think it'd be a combination of Harkonnens and the Sardaukar, which is the sword of the Emperor, coming in and
they did a good job of playing that up and making them really be kind of terrifying for the movie too. Like I thought they represented all of the different characters and everything really well, just with the overall portrayal. One of my favorite scenes in the book and in both movies is Paul's first meeting with the woman, the Bene Gesserit woman, when he sticks his hand into the box. That part always sticks out to me. So like what happens is his mom wakes him up like middle of the night. It's like, you got to follow me. She brings him to this woman. She's like, you have to listen to everything this lady says. And Paul's just kind of like super skeptical.
understandably so. So the lady is trying to figure out if Paul is is it animal versus human, right? So he's going to have to stick his hand into this box, and he's going to experience immense pain. And if he removes his hand from the box, she kills him with the little thing she's holding in her hands that she's holding up to his neck. And if Paul takes his hand out, then he's no better than an animal because he's reacting to pain. If he leaves his hand in there for the entirety of what she says, then he's more than just a reactive animal. And I like the whole like meaning behind that. Just the whole thing that you have to experience pain, and obviously us as humans experience pain all the time. Like you can relate it to even like I hate current events. Like I hate everything that's happened the last 20 months. Like it's been more mentally painful or spiritually painful for folks. But Paul comes out of that box stronger. And I think that obviously we can come out of this certain sort of pain as well stronger, as long as we have to like determine ourselves to do that.
And from the book perspective of it, there's also like an interesting, they don't give a lot of this either, but there is an interesting backstory with why that test was necessary. Not just to determine if he's, if he can suppress his baser animalistic instincts, but Jessica was not supposed to have a son. She was supposed to bear only daughters, and which is explained more later on as the book series goes. The goal of the Bene Gesserit was they were going to have Atreides' daughters and Harkonnen's sons, and they were going to marry them and create like a super house, which was the Bene Gesserit is really interesting because you have the Emperor and you have the Emperor is the one in control, but he's really not in control of anything. The Spacing Guild and the Bene Gesserit are the ones who are actually controlling everything in this universe, and like the political figures are just the puppets that are being moved around to do their bidding. But so
sounds familiar, right?
Right, doesn't it? It's. I mean, we've got war in the Middle East, connections here. We've got the way political power is kind of pulled and manipulated. That's something that I really like. And then, did you see the critiques about the Islamic stuff? We'll get into that in a minute. So the Lady Jessica is supposed to have daughters so that they can be married off to the Harkonnen sons and create this super house and yada yada yada. Well, she doesn't do that. She has a son because she does it because she loves Leto. And something that's not necessarily explained is she's not his wife. She is his concubine, for lack of a better way to put it. But as far as Leto is concerned, like she is his wife. Like he loves her, and she's the mother of his son. And she gave him a son because she knew that would make him happy. That's what he wanted. The movie kind of played it as a little more of a Jessica was trying to manipulate something, and I don't remember that from the book. I'm pretty sure it was. I didn't think there was that trying to create the one on her part. Yeah. Like she was having a son because she knew that would make Leto happy. Am I right on that? Like
I think you're right. I think just the same as like Paul, you can tell that he struggles throughout the movie versus like his own destiny versus, look, I just want to be a regular dude or whatever. I'm a freak is basically what he says. I think there's also that kind of conflict in Jessica as well, where she kind of has the pressures of the Bene Gesserit, and then she has Leto wanting a son, and she kind of filters back and forth too, more in the book than in the movie.
And that was something else that I saw a critique of the character of Jessica that talked about that they made her kind of sniveling in the movie and that she was like this strong woman in the book. But she becomes that strong woman later in the book. Like for this first part of the movie, that I didn't feel like that's necessarily a bad characterization. Like that kind of is who she was. Like once they join the Fremen and she becomes a what is the mother or whatever?
I know what you're talking. I can't.
Yeah. It'll be covered in the next movie. So whenever she makes that transition in life, then she becomes that strong, formidable woman. But for this part of the story, she's well represented. Like that is kind of who she was for this portion. She's trying to protect her son, hoping for the best for her husband, and knowing that she's pregnant, trying to take care of herself. You know, she was kind of a feeble character in that part of the book. So I didn't think that criticism was very apt, especially if you know what's coming next. Now that they have joined the Fremen, like she's going to, if she doesn't develop into that person over the next 2 movies, then I'll be disappointed. But for just what this movie is, it did a good job of setting that up. Yeah,
I think they I mean, this was written in the 60s too, so this is a really anti-feminist take from me. But so you're more like masculine strength is on the outside, and you're in the feminine strength is more like an inward type thing, right? And this has been true throughout time. And you see that during the scene that we were talking about earlier with the box where she's standing outside the door. Like that takes a lot of strength to bring your son into that sort of situation because you know what could happen. And I think they did a good job of portraying her as she's standing outside the door, repeating, "Fear is a mind killer, fear is a mind killer." And I think that's how I envisioned it when I read the book. So they did a good job of that.
Yeah, I agree. And I liked this portrayal that Timothy Chalamet or whatever his name is. I liked his portrayal of Paul better than I did the 80s movie version.
I did too. Yeah.
Like literally on page 1, Paul's a 15-year-old, and like you can buy that he's a 15-year-old.
Yeah, he looks like a 15-year-old. Yeah.
And now when he looks like he's in his mid-20s, like like he's almost an adult. And that's an important aspect of the book and everything is that he is very young. Like he is very green and coming into all of this as a child, not as a seasoned adult. So I think this movie captures that aspect of Paul a lot better.
Yeah, and you can see the reluctance too to sort of follow that destiny. He kind of knows that there is something with him that makes him different than the rest of the Atreides, and he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to follow through with that at first, or maybe even throughout the whole movie. I mean, towards the end, you kind of see him coming into his own a little bit, and part of that is actually one of the few scenes that you do see kind of the spice working, where they're kind of down in their little bunker, and you see like the light shining, the spice is like surrounding him, and he's becoming hyper aware. I think the book kind of puts it as he's got like this blend of rationality and spirituality that the rest of the humans around him don't have. And he's able to, so he has dreams. So as a spiritual part, as he has the dreams where he sees the visions and can sort of tell the future, but he says sometimes the future isn't realized 100% to the full extent that he sees in the dream. And then he's also kind of got, does he have like a Mentat kind of rationality about him?
Yeah. So he is, Halleck has, not Halleck, gosh, now I'm going to have to look his name up because it's going to piss me off that I forgot what their Mentat's name was. But yeah, he has, so something that gets fleshed out more in the book. And actually I think they did it in the original movie in the 80s, where you get to see where Paul was doing like the training, and like all of them are there to watch him like train, basically. And he does have the Mentat training as well, and he has battle training, and he has his mother's Bene Gesserit training. So he's
a freak, like he says.
Yeah. He's been trained in so much different stuff. Like he is very, very diverse. Where like the Bene Gesserit train as Bene Gesserit, period. The Mentats train as Mentats, period. The warriors typically train as warriors, and he's got all of this. So he is kind of uniquely developed as a character in that he does see the world and everything from like multiple different facets that most of the other characters wouldn't, just because of the nature of kind of the sectarian way that culture is built for this universe, which is really interesting too. A very high level of specialization in the universe. It's really cool.
Yeah. And then one reason, like the Fremen are so in tune to him possibly being, I can't remember the name that they use for him, but the one is the Bene Gesserit over time kind of like lay out these myths that a savior is going to come. And like it's kind of like prophecies being fulfilled when the Atreides comes, and there's Paul walking with his mother, and they're kind of off to the side, like wanting to get to see what their potential savior or whatever.
Yeah, they're I guess infiltration would be the best way to put it, but like the Bene Gesserit have and like bearing in mind that this Dune, it's the first Dune book is set in like the year,
I think 10,000 or something.
10,581 or something. Like it's set way off in the future. And if you read some of the histories and stuff, like the Galactic Empire, as it is kind of construed in this universe, has existed since like somebody's going to correct me because I'm going to butcher this. I want to say it's like 6,400 or so, like that, or in the 6,200, 6,400, somewhere in that general millennia is when the kind of the Galactic Empire as it is now construed sort of came into being. So the Bene Gesserit have been, pulling the strings on shit for 4,000 years at this point. So there's definitely there's a lot of them laying out, kind of setting the table for things to come. And so there has been some like prophecies and stuff like that have spread even out to the, these far reaches of the universe. And I think they do talk about it in the book that didn't the Fremen had like a Bene Gesserit mother or whatever.
But yeah, I think that's what she passes away, and I believe Jessica takes her place.
Yeah,
right? And that's what we're going to see in the second movie.
They've had Bene Gesserit, influence for forever, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and then,
go ahead.
Oh, speaking of the Fremen, one of my quibbles, Dr. Kynes, as far as I can tell, is not a woman in the book.
No.
That was a little, I was like, oh, that's who that's supposed to be. For a second, I was like, this is not what I remember in the book.
Yeah. I didn't necessarily.
You didn't have an issue?
It didn't make me mad.
Yeah. And as far as like prophecy, another one of my favorite scenes in the book and the movie is when Kynes is helping Leto and Paul with their suits. And she has to pretty much adjust Duke Leto's suit, and she goes to help Paul, and he already has it perfectly set up. And then she kind of repeats prophecy of "He shall know your ways," as if born to them.
Yeah, and he had cool she said like, "Why'd you fit your boots like that? You have them slip fitted like the Fremen." And he said it just felt natural. And
I like the right way. Yeah.
Yeah, and I did. So I guess I didn't necessarily take issue with Kynes being a woman, because the overall importance of the character isn't necessarily impacted by whether it's a man or a woman. Does that make sense? Like, like if they go into this movie and you make Paul a woman, well then fuck you, I'm out. Like I'm not even gonna watch. I'm not even gonna watch beyond the reveal of that. Like there are some characters and this is something that does piss me off in some iterations of books into movies, is that some of them will do this. Like, they will take a primary character that has importance and is a man or is a woman, and they'll gender swap them, and it completely fucks up the relevance of the character to the overall story. Like, it might fit whatever they're doing for this rendition of the story, but I don't want that. Like, I want the story to be told. And for Kynes, it was like, it didn't matter if Kynes was a man or a woman. The purpose was still served. So that's one of those things that I try not to get too hung up on stuff like that. Like, I didn't feel like it was some woke, catering or pandering or it wasn't something. It wasn't some dumbass like Hollywood thing. Like, she was a very good actor for that role. Like, she portrayed that character really well. I didn't think that the character lost anything by being a woman as opposed to a man, if that makes sense.
And she's dead now, so
right.
Spoiler alert.
Right. Like, that's kind of like, it didn't matter, because whether it was a he or a she, they're going to do what they were intended to do and die. So, a man and a woman can die just as well as a man, unless it's a Michael Myers movie, in which case a gay couple cannot be murdered just as well as a straight couple. That is homophobic.
I saw something about that controversy. I didn't read up on it. I was just not even going to give this any sort of time, I guess.
Yeah, I read the article because I'm a dumbass and I read everything. And, I definitely lost brain cells for that one. I think drinking a beer afterwards healed some of the brain cells.
There you go. We said that we liked this portrayal of Paul better than the movie in the 80s. I liked Chani in the movie in the 80s better than Zendaya. I can't remember. I don't know who played her in the 80s, but I kind of liked her better. I recently watched the movie a couple weeks ago, so it's probably more fresh in my mind. Also, I just find her more attractive. Maybe that's why I like her better. I don't know.
I can see that. She.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying Zendaya was bad. I think she did a pretty good job with the role.
Yeah, and that's going to be another one of those that it's going to be more important what they do with her in the next two movies than what they did with her in this movie. Like, this one was just kind of an introduction, and she's an all right portrayal of the character, I guess. Like, I don't have any.
I guess she's better as this than as Mary Jane in Spider-Man. Like, that didn't make any sense.
Amen, brother. Woo! Yes.
Speaking of redheads, Mary Jane is supposed to be a redhead.
Yes, like that's not one of those things that
don't mess with that.
Listen, Disney, you're fucking up. All right. If Mary Jane is a redhead and she is every kid my age is, or coming up in the 90s, Mary Jane was the redheaded hot chick that you wanted to bone, and now you take that away, like, you are doing a disservice to the redhead community. And gingers are going extinct very quickly. Like, it's a genetic defect, and that sucks for y'all. But like, we've got to support our ginger community. Don't be taking away fictional characters who are ginger when the actual gingers are dying off. Come on, Disney. What the fuck?
Said it better than I could. For sure. One thing they didn't cover in the movie, I don't know if they'll do this in the second one or the second part, but the Fremen that Paul kills in a duel, since he kills him, it's on him to take care of his widow and the children of his widow. I don't know. Do you think they're leading into that? You don't even meet his widow in this movie. From what I remember.
In the movie, there was no indication given that these people exist at all. So,
right.
So that's going to be something we'll see in the second movie. And that is, and like I said, like, there's going to be a whole lot that the second, because supposedly this is a trilogy. So there's going to be a whole lot that rides on the second and third movies in terms of if I continue to have a positive review of this Dune this Dune series.
The duel is interesting too, because we're 10,000 years into the future or whatever, or I guess 8,000 and some change, and there's still these tribalistic barbaric duels to sort of like find your way within the group or whatever. And then he kills the guy, and instead of shunning him or whatever, they're like, oh, you're part of our group now. Like, this is...
I thought that part was really well represented too. Like the fight, and that Paul was attempting to offer leniency and hesitant to kill somebody else, and having Javier Bardem, Stilgar, they're like, why is he playing with him? Like, they're about to get pissed off because
they're like, why is he toying with our guy?
They think that he's just fucking with him, and he's never killed anybody. Like, he doesn't. Number one, he doesn't know their traditions. He doesn't know that, like, this is a fight to the death. Period. There is no surrender here. Mm-hmm. And then that he does have Jameis outmatched, and he's not toying with him. He's not fucking with him. He just doesn't want to kill. Like, he legitimately doesn't want to kill him, and having just
the kill is like, it's basically out of self-defense too. It's like, well, I have to do this or else I'm dead.
Right.
Like, it's not this sort of like Jameis is actively trying to kill him.
Right.
Paul's just like, I gotta survive. All right, I gotta kill him to survive.
Right. He doesn't do it out of malicious intent. Like, he doesn't have any other way out. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed that fight scene and the way they did that. I thought it really was telling of Paul and kind of explained him a little bit without explaining him a little bit. If that makes sense. Like, like, you get to see him fight, and they tell you that Jameis is a very good fighter. So like, he's not going into this against somebody that would be considered an inferior opponent. Like, he's going against a guy that literally everybody just assumes, okay, so now this Paul kid's dead, and then we're gonna kill his mom, and we'll all move on with life. And obviously that doesn't happen. And so you get to see Paul's fighting prowess and the way he handles himself in a fight. Because at this point, you haven't seen anything like that. Like, you saw the sparring match with Gurney early on, and Paul has been completely removed from basically all fighting and action for the entirety of the events that are going on Arrakis, which is, I mean, that's consistent to the books. Like, he's not a part of any of that. He catches the hunter, the little drone the little drone that's trying to kill him. He catches that, but other than that, like, he has been completely removed from all of the action of everything going on. So this is the first time you get to really see him fight and doing something. So I thought they gave a good portrayal of him. I liked that part of it.
One of the more powerful moments in the movie, I think it's shortly after the fight, right, where the Jessica, Paul's mom, is pleading with them to find a way to get Paul off of the planet. And then Paul's just like, no. Like, obviously getting him off the planet keeps him safe. And that's kind of what he wanted when he didn't want to follow his destiny or whatever. And now he's just kind of like, no, I got to stay here now. And that's where you kind of see a major change take place from Paul at the beginning of the movie to Paul at the end. And then he instantly gains the respect of the Fremen when he does that, including Chani, who is really skeptical of him when she first meets him.
Maybe it's because they didn't spend a whole lot of time in this film putting Paul and Chani together. That you only see, like, they only interact very, very minimally, in that she gives him the knife and basically tells him that Jameis is about to kill him. So you don't get to see the because, like, in the book and even as you've seen from his dreams in the movie, like he has this connection to her that, as cheesy as it sounds, like he's almost in love with her before he met her because of this, dream connection that he's had. Yeah. Whereas she's a Fremen chick that has literally spent her entire life fighting for her own survival. So like, she's not too interested in this soft ass white boy from a water planet.
Right.
And I don't think they play up that dynamic. I think that might be why you and I both like the 80s version more, is because they really do kind of give her a little bit of an edge of being an asshole towards Paul that they just don't give them enough interaction for you to see that yet. And maybe they play that up a little bit more because like the two of them becoming a couple and really being, what springs off everything else that comes through the next 5 books, that doesn't happen right away. Like there's a lot of build to that. So
I think Jessica fights against them becoming a couple. If I remember correctly.
Jessica's like adamantly against it, which I guess you haven't read far enough in the books. I can't go.
Okay.
I guess Jessica might not be wrong after all, but
part two isn't for another 2 years, right? Is that what?
I think that's right.
I don't know if they got the green light, so I got time. I'll read them all.
I heard they have greenlit the next part, so
they did.
It's definitely gonna happen.
I assume they did. It seemed like it did really well.
Yeah, and it hasn't been like
first a couple weeks.
It hasn't been panned by critics or the audience, really. I mean, other than the the fact that they're culturally appropriating Islam.
Yeah, explain this to me. I don't know a whole lot about the whole Islamic undertones or whatever. Or we don't have to get into
it. I'm trying to think of a good way to put it. Like the way Frank Herbert kind of builds the... Okay, so my problem with the article that talked about how they were culturally appropriating Islam and all this stuff, and that it had the Islamic undertones without actually having Muslims in it and all this dumb shit that that this article talked about. That all really comes into play with the Fremen culture. There are strong Islamic overtones throughout the entire kind of universe, because something that, like, the Balerian Jihad is what led to there being no more computers and was kind of a big turning point in this universe. And so there are certain aspects of it, like the way that the military is kind of construed, and some of the religious kind of overtones of just the general galactic culture. It has kind of a light Islamic foundation, but where the real meat of that, the faith and stuff like that, comes in is once you get into the Fremen culture and you really start to see Paul like take his place as their savior in that, as their Messiah in that culture. That's when you really start to see that play out more. So I had a problem with there being this like big gripe about that they didn't properly portray it. They haven't gotten to that part of the story yet. It didn't need to be portrayed any more than what it was. Like, you can very clearly tell by everything. Well, like, as soon as they land on the planet, you can tell that this culture has a foundation in Islam. Like, they have a very it has a very Muslim overtone to it. It's not like they gloss that over. Like, I mean, did you have any doubt about that as soon as they land on the planet and you see?
No, I mean, yeah, they look like
everything about
Middle Easterners.
All of the people who are here, like and just looking at the city itself, like it's not like they whitewashed it. I mean, and then,
I mean, Paul is his destiny is sort of to wage a jihadi war, right? Eventually.
Right. And
we'll get to that.
I think a gripe that somebody had was that I don't recall this, that they used crusade the word crusade instead of jihad to refer to something. And
did they replace it?
See, and I don't know specifically what that's in reference to. Like, I don't remember that specifically. So,
okay.
Like, and I don't know, maybe because I don't go into a movie looking for literally any possible reason to be offended. I don't pick up on that stuff, but
it's interesting because when Jessica has Paul's sister, the daughter, I read in I don't know, it was like a commentary or something, that the daughter actually represents, what's her name going to be? Ali, I think.
Alia.
She kind of comes out of the womb, like with full like consciousness of who she is, and she knows that she's kind of a blend of good and evil, and she kind of has this original sin, and that has like Christian connotations to it as well. And I think Herbert put that in there intentionally.
Yeah, there's a lot more nuance to the books than just Islam. Like he blends a lot of religious thematic elements throughout the whole thing. It's not exclusively about Islam. He does take a lot of, and I'd have to find it. There was actually a piece that was written about this, about why he built his universe that way. And it was really interesting, and I got to go find it, and I'll have to reread it.
He's very much in this. He was friends with Frank Herbert, or not Frank Herbert. He is Frank Herbert. He's friends with Robert Heinlein.
Yeah,
and they're very similar in that they're science fiction writers in the 60s. It seems like there's a common theme. They're kind of more libertarian minded. They have a distrust of the government, and you see that also in Herbert's writing with the whole empire, with the emperor and the distrust of the galactic empire and such. So this is kind of Herbert's background. I also read he was like a staunch anti-communist as well, and also like related to Joseph McCarthy, like distantly. Did you read this? Yeah, I guess he wasn't a fan of McCarthy's whole blacklisting tactics, which I might be these days, but he wasn't a fan of the Soviet Union.
I mean, there are a lot of, especially as you read the books, there are a lot of political connotations to this. Like there are interesting religious themes and overtones. There's also, like we were talking about at the beginning of the spice, and Arrakis is like oil in the Middle East. I mean, and
yeah. Well, I think the Soviet Union, so the U.S. was in Vietnam during the writing of this. I think the Soviet Union was actually in Afghanistan at this point in time.
Yeah.
Because Afghanistan took down that empire too. Nobody learns their lessons.
So there's there's a lot going on in these books, and it's written in a sci-fi setting. It's like we talked about last time we talked. Like, these authors were brilliant, and they had a lot of really big ideas about religion, about the world, about politics, about all of these things. And instead of writing political commentary, they craft this incredible universe, and they tell the stories of what we are seeing in our lifetimes.
Mm-hmm.
They tell it in a way that it's engaging. And if you're not looking for a story about politics and religion, then you're just going to get good space soap opera about giant worms and jihads. And if you are looking for that stuff, you can find it and you can be like, ooh, look at that. Ooh, look at that.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
holy shit.
Sure.
This is like telling the story of our world right now. Like,
it's really interesting, the timing of this movie too. So you've heard of like predictive programming, right? So like movies in the 90s portrayed the Twin Towers being run through wet planes or whatever. And then 8 years later, you got planes running into the buildings, whatever narrative you want to believe regarding 9/11, or even just 10 years ago, you had things like Hunger Games and Divergent come out, and it portrayed this dystopian, chaotic nightmare that we seem to be living in right now. So that was sort of predicting what was going to come in the next few years. I wonder, we're kind of like in a chaotic time now, and Dune kind of portrays chaos and Paul is kind of like the guy to come bring order to the universe. And I just wonder what sort of predictive programming is going on with bringing this movie out at this time and what we might be in store for in the future. Just something to think about.
How old Barron Trump? Is he 15?
He's the heir. This is his destiny.
Well, you got anything else on the movie or the book? I think we pretty thoroughly covered this one, and just on the.
Yeah.
It's hard to cover it beyond a surface level because, like I've said several times throughout talking about it, what they do next is going to be a lot more important than what they did for this one. I think, I thought this one set a really good table.
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't know anything about Dune, you probably came away from this confused as hell. But hopefully you go read the book and then you understand like the backstory behind it and get more of the nuance, and then you're prepared for the next one. And if it doesn't live up to it, you can be disappointed along with me and you and everybody else.
And one thing you miss in movies, unless you have subtitles on, but those get distracting, is dialogue. And the dialogue in Dune is great. Like, you get some great quotes out of Dune.
Yeah. And just, and overall, a thing that is always a disconnect between a book and a movie is the written word has all of this explanation and detail, and you get all of that nuance that in a movie, it's virtually impossible to get unless you just have a narrator telling the story as you go. And that's annoying as shit. Like, nobody wants to go watch a movie to listen to somebody talk about what's going on in the movie. So, unless you're watching Science Theater 3000 or whatever. But I felt like the movie did a good job of showing you what it is without really telling you all of the backstory. So,
and
maybe that was deliberate. Maybe they wanted it to be this thing that people would go see, this big, flashy, like impressive thing, and then be like, oh shit, well, why is all of that important? And, do some more research and go read a book and get more into it. And maybe it was deliberate, maybe not. Maybe they were just trying to make it.
No, I was just gonna say, it's funny. I was watching it. My brother asked me what I was doing. I was like, I'm watching Dune. He's like, what's that? And I was like, oh, it's a good book turned into a movie. I said, you should check it out. So he started watching it, and he texts me and he goes, they're just trying to copy Star Wars. He's a big fan of Star Wars. I was like, go check the publishing date of Dune, and then check when Star Wars came out, and he'd come back at me with that statement. He's like, oh, my bad. Maybe Star Wars copied from them.
Yeah. Star Wars is a cheap knockoff of Dune. Nope.
Yeah.
They only have one space worm, and it kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Well, this was fun. Hopefully we have more to talk about over the next 2 years before the next Dune movie comes out.
Yeah.
And I'm sure
I think some things might happen between now and then that could spark some conversation.
I'm sure if nothing else, you'll read the next 2 Dune books, and then we can talk about the first 3. and the stories that are laid out in those, and what we expect them to do with the next 2 movies.
There we go. I've also been reading Foundation at your recommendation too. So
how are you liking that so far?
I do. I finished the first one and I liked it, and it's also kind of tells the future as far as like when they talk about like trade and stuff and how all this trade made them weak, and now they gotta figure out how to be self-sustainable again. And it's like all these people knew what they were talking about back then. Maybe we should have listened.
Like, that's one that anybody who hasn't, as awesome as Dune is, like if somebody's looking to really maybe understand some of the like the more lofty things that are going on in our world right now, like I think Foundation is really a good book to read, just to kind of get a really cool story told around what we're seeing in real time. Like I really do think Foundation is an excellent starter for some of that. Like, you know, the groupthink mentality type stuff, and like the decay of an empire. It really is.
And they're pretty quick reads too. So
yeah, I mean they go fast, especially the Foundation books, because they are broken up into, so each book is like shorter stories in this universe. So they do go quick, because like you've got the story of the different characters, and they jump through time. So, you know, it's not super linear. Like from the time, from the time you have, you know, the original stories of him doing his thesis on why the empire is going to collapse, and being banished and establishing Foundation on Terminus at the ass crack, you know, all the way at the edge of the universe, to the first like big event where the empire is starting to crack and collapse. It's like 500 years passes or something. Like the way they break the story out, you get all of these individual stories throughout the book. And so it does make it a really quick read, because he progresses the stories along fairly quickly. Like this thing is happening and there's a solution for it. And, you know, you're kind of seeing it all, how it builds up to it, what happens, and then how they come through it, and how that was part of this plan that this guy had come up with forever ago by just looking at basic human nature over all of the history of humanity and saying, all right, people are fucking stupid, and this is what they're going to do from now until they kill themselves off, and we're going to try to keep them from killing themselves off. So yeah, I think Foundation is one that should be foundational reading for anybody.
There we go. That's a dad joke.
If you could see me right now,
if you believed in public schools, then Foundation would be in the required reading section. If you were the head.
Amen.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes. If you could see me right now, I'm fully embracing my my dad mode. I've got khakis and house slippers on, and I got my glasses on. I even parted my hair like my dad does.
Yes, your lawnmower tennis shoes on, and got the grill fired up in the back. It might be too cold to grill. I don't know.
A little bit. Today, anyway.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, thanks a lot. This was a lot of fun. We might have even had a few people that watched us during this. So
hopefully we didn't turn them away. If you're still in there, go watch the movie. And this conversation will
this Dune book sounds pretty cool, even if the movie might not give us a whole lot of. Maybe we should watch the movie and read the book. Do it both at the same time, because you could probably read the book in the time it takes you to watch the movie. It's kind of a long movie.
Yeah,
I loved it though. Like, okay, before we wrap, when you were done, did it feel like it had been a 2.5 hour movie?
No, it went by pretty quickly.
Yeah, like
I was enjoying it. Yeah,
like I told my son we were gonna watch, so I watched it, and then I watched it with him on. So I watched it in our bedroom on the little TV, and then I watched it on the big screen with him in the living room. and it's like it's 2.5 hours. So get ready because we're it's going to be a long haul. But it didn't feel like that. Like it didn't feel like a long movie. It was over, and it's like, oh shit, it's been over 2 hours. That's the quickest 2 hours of my life.
Yeah. And the second time I watched it, I went with a friend of mine to the theater, and she hadn't read the books, and she enjoyed the movie. So I don't know if it motivated her to read the books, but she said it was enjoyable. And she said she actually could follow along pretty quickly. So
okay,
coming from someone who hasn't read the books,
if a book can be appealing to someone who hasn't read it, and they can at least somewhat follow along and maybe even get more interested in it, I think it served its purpose.
Yeah. We should probably apologize to our friend Mac for not doing the sock puppet reenactment of the movie.
See, my sock puppets aren't ready yet. I still got to sew the buttons for eyes on there.
There we go. It's forthcoming.
That's right. That'll be the project that we work on between now and the second movie coming out.
There we go.
We'll get the sock puppet reenactment done. Well, thanks a lot. This was a lot of fun. You got anything to plug? Tell people about your Substack again before we go.
markmetz.substack.com. Justin says that he reads everything. Hopefully that's one of the things that he reads.
It is.
Should be something coming out tomorrow, actually. So, yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Awesome.
Justin.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.